on September the 19th, and I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Jerry Pujic, Commissioner Carlos Perez,
Here.
Commissioner John Graber,
Here.
Commissioner Stephanie Dunn, here, Commissioner Ann Warman, here, Commissioner Bob Howard,
Here.
Commissioner John Thompson.
Here. All here, quorum is present. Shall we stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. The fourth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the attached material?
Yes.
There is a concern, I think, though, for myself and I think for Jerry as well, regarding the minutes for that date. There's no record of our decision to continue on with the commercial zoning as opposed to Mr. Edwards' request to change it. And I think we would like to have that directed.
I spoke with the chair, Jerry, and actually that was part of the public comment section. So we didn't really make any decision on it because it wasn't a new business.
Well, I thought the decision had already been made by the city council back on the original proposition to rezone. Was that not the case?
No, that didn't happen. It went to Public Services Committee and they just decided not to move forward. But when Mr. Edwards was here the last time, he went over his comments as here from the citizen section. So it wasn't part of the new business. Like Planning Commission didn't need to make any decision on it. Like they didn't apply for rezoning this year. So we just didn't make any decision on it. It was just public comment. And everybody's invited to come and comment, and it was just a comment received. And moving forward, I mean, in future, if the chair wants to amend the agenda during the meeting and add that as an item, like a new business, we can make a decision on it. We can definitely do that. But for this case, because he didn't apply for rezoning, Mr. Edwards didn't apply for rezoning, he just came here and made a public comment.
Okay. I give the chair back to the chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, that was
Regarding that.
okay, so let's
Still
entertain a motion to approve the minutes as printed. I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. City staff communications.
Mr. Chair, I have some news. We had some recent changes in our department. London is no longer with the city. So if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me or department head, Cody Colt.
Okay.
We had some items. One of them was the city code update that was brought up, I believe, like back in July about removing height restriction, adding short-term RV camping to the code, and removing single-family detached from all the commercial zones. Even in front of the city council last week, and they approved all of them. So I just wanted to give you an update. Next item was annexation. We received 6 requests for annexations for 6 properties. And they in front of city council last week. And the council approved that they can start the annexation process. So now they have to file a petition and start the process formally. We are going to have annexation the next plan. I mean, we are going to bring it the next planning commission meeting for October 19th. So that's going to be the first time we're going to go over it. After, I mean, whoever like files a petition, depends on like if they can do it on themselves. But yeah, that's about it. And October meeting, we are going to have annexations and also code updates. We're gonna have some code updates, so expect some public hearing.
Sure.
Yes,
Are we going to be told where these annexations are occurring, where the requests are coming from?
Pardon?
Will we be told at that next meeting on the 19th where these annexations?
Yes, yes, we're gonna go over like everything.
Is there any other communication?
That's it.
Okay. Any public comments?
And
There are none, okay. Unfinished business,
there's nothing.
okay. New business. Just believe there's a discussion regarding the housing action plan.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, received grants from the Department of Commerce recently for housing action plan. City hired SCJ and they are preparing the plan for us. So they are here today and they're gonna go over what they've done so far and what we should expect moving on.
Thank you. Members of the commission, my name is Dan Penrose. I'm the planning manager for SCJ Alliance. We're based out of Lacey, have offices in a number of other spots within state. We've worked with you on a number of items throughout the years, and we're pleased to be able to continue our efforts assisting with the housing action plan. The housing action plan comes out of state legislative funding that recognizes that our state in particular is in a pretty rough spot as it relates to housing availability and affordability. Department of Commerce has awarded money to communities throughout the state to try to deal with this, and Yelm is a recipient of, I think, about the third round of grants for housing. So we have kind of an item, I was intending this to be pretty much like a workshop. So I'm looking for a dialogue and we're gonna walk through a handful of things. We'll start off, I'm joined today by Alison, she's a planner, and she'll cover the statistical review. But I wanted to highlight for you, if I might, a few of the things related to housing in the state of Washington, our schedule and some of our deliverables. Talk to you about your role and then dive into a little bit of the statistical things we've seen at a very quick and cursory approach within the last week, because we've been under contract, I think, about 6 days. And then have towards the end of our discussion, have a dialogue related to priorities. And that's what you'll see there as the final piece on the discussion thing. So are there any questions to start off? Okay. So as far as one of the required elements of the comprehensive plan, the housing element. It's touched on at RCW 3670 A070. Must have housing element and innovative techniques in your comp plan. Specifically, the state authorized grant funding through HB 1923, House Bill 1923. So when you hear reference to HB, that's what that's about. With the goal of encouraging construction of additional affordable and market rate housing in a greater variety of housing types and at prices that are accessible to a greater variety of incomes, including strategies aimed at the for-profit single-family home market. A number of items in there that the housing action plan should accomplish, including quantifying existing and projected housing needs for all income levels, developing strategies to increase the supply of housing, and serve the needs identified in that section, and analyze the population and employment trends, consider strategies to minimize displacement of long-term residents, review and evaluate the current housing element adopted pursuant to that RCW, including those same goals. So it's implementing that initial language from the Growth Management Act. Provide for participation input from community members and a number of stakeholders, and include a schedule of programs and actions to implement the recommendations of the housing plan. Pretty straightforward. So I think the charge was pretty straightforward, and I think at a high level, it's pretty easy to see that we need more housing, and we need more variety of housing, and we need to provide housing for a place for people in the income bands that are having struggles accessing that housing. That's, you know, at that high level, that's a lot easier said than done. So what we'd like to do with you is kind of evaluate initially kind of what some of your thoughts are about that as we dive into some of this process that'll help us wrap our heads around the issues that are germane to Yelm. And as we begin to speak to stakeholders in your community, help inform us on those issues that are of concern. So we have a couple asks of you this afternoon, and that's kind of where we're headed. So I'm going to look at what is page 2 of that memorandum that we sent out, and talk a little bit about the existing communities and housing needs analysis. We're starting that. That's kind of like our data pool, where we dive into the American Community Survey, which is a databases and spreadsheets that Census Bureau puts out. There's a number of other sources as well that Melissa can touch on, including the Washington Center for Economic Research related to real estate. So we'll look at that. Also, as mentioned in the charge for that HB 1923 money, we're looking at some demographics related to socioeconomic, household income, purchasing power, things like that. And so that data, as we get smart about the issues particular to what the statistics are telling us in Yelm, that'll happen this fall. The second piece is this action 2 is this public engagement, which public engagement for the way we administer these plans happens throughout the duration of the effort. So this process funded through Department of Commerce has, you know, grant requirements on a reimbursement basis, and that's going to run all the way through until June 30th. So on July 1st, we need to kind of be moving into the adoption process. It's expected that your role will be kind of advisory in nature, and the Planning Commission will be presented with, you know, drafts of the materials and be able to, you know, make sure that we're on the right path. And then ultimately, as with most planning documents, you'll make a recommendation to council, and the council will make a decision after that point. So our target right now, we're starting a little bit late. I think we can catch up. Our target is for June 30th as wrapping up the plan and kind of sending it off to council for approval. I do want to draw your attention to the draft engagement plan that we put together. This public participation plan kind of outlines for you how we expect to go about the work. We are working with staff to make sure there's a landing page off of the city's website where we would have this and other materials available. And so people in the community, as they're paying attention to what's going on the housing action plan, will be able to access that document. So this is a draft. This is kind of open for discussion. I think staff's going to provide some feedback as well, but Melissa will be your primary point of contact, you know, visa through the staff piece, and they've already started working well with Miriam on that. On that back page, this meeting kind of serves as the kickoff for the effort. You can see the 4 bullets there that we're trying to accomplish during this meeting: to discuss the process, review some statistics, talk about needs and opportunities, and then particularly here, my first ask is, as you think about assisting us with this effort, you look at those bullets that we have in that second section there, the community interviews, and provide suggestions or adjustments to that as needed. We're really looking to you to help us with staff make sure we're asking people who are representative of the development things that are going on in the community, but not just in the development arena. There's certainly community members who are outside of that per se, and who would certainly have feedback to provide us about location and attainment for residential housing and also development community. So looking to that. And then finally, you can see down there at the bottom, the full product timeline that's kind of matching up with, back to this grant deliverable schedule that we're talking about. So the intent here is to be transparent with the effort and let people know where they can plug in. There is probably another workshop for us when we come back. I think we will work on when that might be, but there's going to be at least probably more touches with you. I know right now we're planning on meeting with councils, is it the Public Works Committee? Public Services Committee in October. So that's our next step, and we'll be a little bit more refined when we present some of that information to them. But again, it's a sounding board type of approach. So back to the page 2 of that memo, the bottom, in action 3. This process kind of goes statistics, conversations, and refinement of themes, and then move into the body of the work, which is to develop goals and policies and strategies and action items for how to provide for through these apparatus of zoning and provide for additional housing options, and also identify people in the community that can come alongside and partner with to deliver some of the things that are prioritized. So you probably guess that a lot of these housing plans have some similarity between them. Obviously, Bellevue is going to have different outcomes than Washtenaw across the state. So, but we are seeing a lot of similarities about lack of supply, housing conditions, and household sizes, and a number of other items too, especially price. So I'll let Melissa kind of talk to you a little bit about some of the statistics we've looked at so far, and open it up to you for some feedback on that. And as I said, we're gonna target to wrap this whole effort up in late spring, early summer of 23. Any questions for me before I step away from the podium?
I've got notes. Okay, so as Dan said, my name is Melissa Paulson. I'm a planner with SEJ. My favorite part is the statistics, which not everybody loves. So I'm more than willing to give you a cursory overview of what I've found. So Yelm statistically is a little younger than the rest of Washington. I've also looked at Thurston County, but you can't fit everything on 8.5 by 11. So yeah. We're looking for, or I guess not really looking for, but we're looking at mostly 44 years and younger, which kind of represents that military housing, military families that we see a lot. And I'm local, I grew up in Lacey, so I definitely know military housing is huge, especially in Yelm. And then if you go to the educational attainment, what you'll see is that really higher than average, some college or associate's degree for both renters and owners. So what this really is showing you is a breakdown of owners versus renters, because we're really looking at who's purchasing these houses and who's renting them. That's a huge statistic in regard to really how everything is moving. And all right, sometimes I get lost in the data again. And then also in regard to just how old the housing stock is, it's fairly new, honestly, which is not surprising because there is a lot of continuous development every year in Yelm, not a lot of it, just continuous. And so we're not seeing a lot of older housing stock. And we're also not seeing a lot of householders who are staying for an excessively long time, which is very on par with the military housing. So what you'll see in the year, or moved into unit, that's really just showing you basically when they bought the house or when they started their rental lease. And we're really seeing kind of about 2015, so that's about 7 to 10 years that people are staying and then they're moving on. That's pretty consistent with military. So that's what it's showing us now. But statistical, quantitative and qualitative are completely different. And so we really want to hear what you guys have to say and what you see in your community. I can speak for Lacey and Tumwater where I live, but I can't speak for you guys, and we don't want to. We want to hear your voices. So with that, I will turn it back over to the fun part.
So, yeah, so for trend lines, fairly consistent with other places we're seeing in Thurston County. Although we did anecdotally find some information, I thought it was interesting. I know them your story about your.
Yeah.
So Melissa lives in Century, right? That was your developer, Century Development in South Tumwater. And her floor plan right now is $150,000 more in Yelm than it is in Tumwater.
From when I purchased it in 2020.
Right.
So there is a little,
But we kind of like off the shelf, kind of ran some quick numbers on inflation and things like that. And it's still growing about twice as fast as what it would have. Just pure inflation over the last 2 years is 22% or so on housing. That's about $70,000 instead of $150,000. So there's some work to be done there to figure out if the housing costs are a little higher because the stock is newer and the proximity to the base is driving that. I'm pretty familiar with the basic allowance for housing. We can talk about that as well if you have questions about that. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask John, is that something that you agree with?
Well, the problem is that within the last few years, everything has really gone topsy-turvy. And so what used to be is no more. And we used to lag behind. Lacey and Olympia, when the market is regular, tends to increase at a faster pace than Yelm. Okay. So then we get to the point where we have these aggressive buying times, and people see us as low. And that, I mean, we've got houses that are even more expensive than Olympia and Lacey right now. There's no rhyme or reason, and it's not. I can tell you from firsthand, it's not VA that's pushing it. I mean, we have a lot more cash buyers than we've ever had before. It's people that are just getting out, and the country is a great place to come to because you can do Zoom meetings. You work from home. That's opened up our whole market. So.
So it's more than the environment here is
Yes.
more appealing.
It's
The city.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that other places on kind of the fringe communities that are on the edges of maybe a more built up urban space. Certainly East Pierce County's feeling that as well, and I think that peninsula is getting hit pretty hard. People outside of the big harbor area, on the edges, lots of price escalation. So again, this isn't unique. The cost isn't unique to Yelm, but we're looking for some unique solutions that are applicable here in particular. You're all familiar. I think it's probably worth mentioning the basic allowance for housing is the DoD supplement that is provided for soldiers and airmen and their families that live off base. We ran the numbers just really quick, and there's a local modifier, but just the base rate for the basic rate for BAH is around $2,300 to $2,400 a month for the subsidy that the Department of Defense gives to a soldier or an airman to live off base if they have dependents. So that's significant. That's a good chunk of money, not necessarily as much as is needed. So I'm not saying that that's allowing them to access all the housing types that they may want to access. They do have to sometimes bring additional cash to the table for kind of fill out that gap in the mortgage. But it's keeping pace, I think, better with cost escalation than not having that BAH and not being in the military community. It's pretty hard to keep up. If you're renting, it's hard to find money to save up to for the down payment to be able to afford entry into the housing market. So that's a problem we've seen throughout the state.
They make a change. I mean, I said before VA, and of course I was talking about the financing. And it's actually the military itself, active military, is not making that change for us. But VA is a very large part of buyers and retired military that come to our area. So in essence, I guess it is a military, but it's not active military that's.
Yeah, and we'll touch on in the plan, because I think it is relevant for Yelm more than most places, other than like Airway Heights, which is on the eastern side of the state outside Fairchild Air Force Base, where we also work. There are other VA programs that really help with the barrier to housing, with especially the VA loan, which, you know, maybe Commissioner Graver can speak about a little bit, but that's a significant portion of what's going on in Yelm, I think, is the new housing stock. There's the houses are larger than average, and they also have more bedrooms and more rooms than average. And we're also seeing that as the household size coming out of the service member community is by and large larger than the non-military household. Has that been your experience? Any other questions about the statistics before we move on to anything else? I had to report that 100% of the units in Yelm have full plumbing facilities. Not every community is like that. Okay. So we have a little bit of time left to do this last set. So I hope you're up for it. If you have a pen or something to write with, I'd like to give you about 5 minutes to fill out some short answers to these 3 questions. The first question is, what should the Yelm Housing Action Plan prioritize to make sure housing in Yelm meets the community's needs?
What?
Meets the community's needs. So number 1 there on that list. What I'd like to ask you to do out of those, I believe there's 10 items there, as I'd like you to give me feedback. Give us feedback on high, medium, or low prioritization. So you don't need to rank them 1 to 10. I just, for each one, I want an H, an M, or an L. As far as your sense of this, are these items high priorities for the city's housing action plan, a medium priority for prioritization in the city's action plan, or a low priority? High, medium, or low? And then maybe just jot down some notes there on number 2. What you hear from people are challenges in facing housing. And then finally, maybe a couple quick comments on number 3. What role should the city play in addressing the area's housing challenges compared to the private sector? About 5 minutes or so, and you can stop writing.
As the this.
It should be.
All
Yeah.
High, low, or medium.
Another minute or so. Commissioner Thompson, can we start with you or should I start on the other side of
I
that?
don't care.
All right, how about just go through the list from top to bottom with your ranking, high, medium, or low?
Well, basically, at the top of the list is affordability,
Okay, so,
because that's the biggest feedback I get from people trying to find things. So I put that obviously as high.
okay, so we're gonna just rattle off your scores all the way A
Okay.
through J.
Basically, I guess I'm too conservative. I had high for that, high for multifamily types. I had medium for B through G, low for H through J.
Okay.
And so,
Okay, Commissioner Howard,
Yeah, I got a high priority on the affordability. The multifamily types, I gave it a low priority.
Okay.
The variety of housing types, that's a high priority. Smaller units for smaller households, that's a high priority. Larger units for larger households, I think that's a lower priority.
housing for seniors,
Housing for seniors, I give that a high priority. Supportive housing for at-risk residents, I put that in the mid-range.
Okay.
Emergency short-term housing, I put that in the mid-range. Tenant protections, I gave that a mid-range as well. And resources for maintenance, I gave that a high priority.
Commissioner Perez,
Affordability, high. Multifamily types, low. Variety of housing types, high. Low for smaller units, larger units, housing for seniors, supportive housing, and emergency short-term housing. Low on all of those. Medium for tenant protections, and high for resources for maintenance.
all that.
Gave high for affordability. Low for multifamily types. Variety of housing high. Small units, large units, low. As medium, seniors. Supportive at risk, high. Emergency short term. Low. Tenant protection, high. Resource management, low.
Affordability high. Multifamily types high. Variety of housing types high. Small units for smaller households, medium. Medium for larger units for larger households. Medium for housing for seniors. Low for supportive housing for at risk. Medium for emergency short-term housing. Low for tenant protections and low for resources.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna tell you down the list. I had high, medium, high, low, low, high, medium, low, medium, low. Thank you.
And I'll do the same thing. I have high, medium, low, low.
Question,
Sure.
what do you actually mean by resources for maintenance? I've got that infrastructure.
Yeah, that could be infrastructure for sure. It could also be for, there are state and federal monies, grant monies, and mostly for cities to have housing programs where they assist homeowners with minor repairs of the facility, so like re-roofing.
I'm talking infrastructure as well. I think.
Yeah, that's what I was too.
Okay, so Jerry, yours was I believe were L.
Yeah. Oh, it would be medium.
You had high on yours.
Yes. Yeah, without infrastructure, you don't have sewage and water. Get it?
Yeah, so it could be that, it could be infrastructure as well as housing itself for elderly person that 30% of AMI needs assistance with fixing the front porch or the steps into the home, or retrofitting it for ADA access. There's grant programs for that. Any other questions or clarifications on that? I think most of them were, tried to have them be straightforward. Okay, so what where do you think the highest priority came out of that? Is everyone said affordability is high? I put on the top, I wasn't gonna like bury it. Like, I think that's pretty obvious that affordability, I'll tell you, I couldn't buy my house if I tried to do it right now. I don't know about you. But that's pretty sobering that I'd have a hard time buying my own home. I've only been there 6 years and I couldn't afford it right now. So that's a real thing. Fairly good high to medium on the variety of the housing types. Someone who said high on that, or actually anyone, tell me what you meant by that. Tell me
What I meant was, I figured, variety of housing types incorporates all these other subcategories as far as I'm concerned, whether it's larger units or smaller units. It's the variety, it's equitable throughout. They're all equal. You have to have a sufficient amount of smaller units, and larger units, and availability for seniors and all that. So it just has to be equitable.
Okay. Other comments? That's how you read it?
Yeah.
It means more, if everything you're offering is detached, single family home, then you're not really addressing some of the affordability alternatives that have to do with having townhomes or attached dwellings, or multiplexes, quadruplexes and such, that could be much more affordable.
Sure.
So,
Other comments on that one?
On the multifamily or what? Well, I think I interpreted it as different income levels.
That's what I was.
And so, and obviously a concern that you see apartments building, and the starting apartment's $2,800. And so if you have low income families, they can't even rent. And so if you have multifamily, when you're focusing on building, maybe even focusing a developer saying, you'll have so many low income or lower cost apartments available or facilities for low income families. And that might be misinterpreted, but I was looking at it more that way, as important that we provide service to different income level families.
I hear that. Okay, other comments?
On the multifamily, my brain goes to sales. And so, the one thing we really don't have here, and because I'm going around the corner, so, and there was, of course, talking about an F for housing for seniors. We don't have condos per se. I mean, we have condo-based townhomes going in, but we don't have multi-story condominiums. We have multi-story apartment buildings, but people that are older, they don't want to rent. They want to own their own place. If you take a look at California, the condominiums down there are just enormous. They so outweigh apartments. It's amazing. At least, I'm sorry, along the coast. But so that was what I thought of as multifamily types.
Do you have more insight on the condominium side of things?
I do from Hawaii. I used to sell over there.
Condominiums in Washington State have severe limitations in state law. And so that's one reason why they don't exist a lot. And I think the quickest way to probably explain it comes down to liability. And so you get a situation where you defer maintenance on the structure and 30 years later it falls over and kills everybody inside, like happened in Florida. That's kind of the classic horror story of a condominium. Because condominiums are based on, contributing to the common upkeep. And if that's deferred, or if the costs of that maintenance don't keep up with the ability to pay, and so it's $200 one year and $600 the next year and $1,200 a year after that, then there's certain pricing out of your own unit.
Well, like I said, that was Hawaii. We didn't run into those kind of things, especially with the management companies weren't managing rentals per se. They were managing everything. Condominium from taxes, so it wasn't a problem with taxes as far as somebody not paying them. So it came out of taxes, HOAs, through maintenance, and they were on it. And so maybe we're not even equipped for that.
Yeah, so the condominium where you have airspace, basically, if you have a 4-story, 6 wide, everyone's got their own little airspace. That's the part that gets challenging because the foundation is kind of a commonly owned thing. In the styles that you have in Yelm, you actually have real property underneath your unit that you own. Now, you may have a common wall with someone and you maintain that common wall, maybe on both sides, even in a row house situation, but it's not the airspace where you've got larger structural concerns perhaps to feed into on a monthly basis. Okay, how about I saw a pretty good alignment on housing for seniors. Tell me about that.
I did not rank that high. Because to me, it fits in with the rest of the other alternatives. You have seniors who are low income and you have seniors who are high income. And they're looking for a variety of homes. And so being able to have a variety of housing types, to me, captured that entire
Yes.
span.
Yeah, so we had mostly mediums and highs on that one. Yeah.
I listed that one as high. My grandmother recently sold her home and moved into an actual facility, but it's not assisted. She's still independent, but it's like, it's not a condominium. It's more like an apartment building, but it has a hair salon in it. It's got kind of a restaurant in it. It has a community built into it. I don't know if that's, in my mind, that was kind of more of the senior citizens, because like you said, able-bodied seniors can go out and compete with everyone else in the housing market, but if there's seniors no longer living completely on their own, this more community-based apartment style, I think is important too.
Yeah, anything else you wanted to point out on that? Most of the rest of them are pretty, resource for maintenance, mostly low, couple outliers. Tenant protection, pretty mixed as you'd expect. Mostly this was just to kind of let you in on kind of what the types of things we're going to be asking about. And then also to hear from you if there's anything else we should be, considering. Condominiums is a real thing, tons of room for reform, but also, as I said, some risk on that side. So how about we move to number 2 on that? Feedback for us on what you're hearing people are telling you or you're experiencing, maybe yourself, your group of friends on challenges to finding housing.
I talking to them and on another committee that I'm on, it's the military having problems finding housing that they can afford to move in. In fact, the house next door to me is owned by a couple of dentists and somebody they knew was out of there at McCord and could not find housing they could afford to live in. So they let them live there until they could find a house. So, and I've heard that throughout the state on one of the other committees I'm on. Spokane is very bad. This whole area, the military cannot find housing they can afford.
My husband's active duty actually, and we just bought a house this year. So this is very fitting. We made 3 offers. We were the top 2 offers for each of the homes. The other competitor was an all cash buyer. We were under the impression that it wasn't a dentist or someone from out of state. It was a company coming in. They didn't care about inspections. They didn't care about appraisals. They were gonna buy the house, do what they wanted to rent it. That's how we saw it. And as a military family, we've bought homes in Texas and Tennessee. This is the first time our BH does not meet our mortgage payment. And it's the first time that we had to significantly downsize. And then the house that we did end up has some serious concerns with it. Because we had to not do some of the background checks that we normally would have. So from a military family, it is incredibly hard. And the wait list on JBLM is over a year for housing. And for military families, we don't have options. We have to move here.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't really matter. So I'm not sure how you would read into that, other than not letting all these cash buyers come in and make it so competitive that real families can't afford to live here.
Yeah, just so there's no mistaking. The house next door was owned by them, and because they knew the family, knew the military family and their limitations on being able to afford it, they let them live there for nothing.
Thanks for that.
But that is the law. But the great thing to bring up is, you know, how do we, you know, we're trying to support people, the civilians of Yelm, but how do we support the military of Yelm? You know, which actually is a distinction. To me, it's a distinction, because these people put their lives on the line, you know, for us, and the rest of us go to work, you know, so I would love to be able to see something in there where we actually create something. Because we are, you know, we are a military veteran community.
Well, is there any way to differentiate in the buying process from the cash buyers that are from Berkshire Hathaway or somewhere like that, that are not going to actually live there? And the buyers who are a family, who is gonna live there?
My son owns a housing appraisal company out of basically King County and Snohomish, and he runs into that problem continually because he does appraisals, and sometimes the houses will go for 400,000 over the appraisal. But the problem is, unless the state passed a law prohibiting those buyers to buy it, you can't go in and say, I'm sorry, we're not gonna let you buy it because you're paying cash. I'm sorry, you're a corporation. You would have to have a law to do that.
Yes.
And then the other problem is, if you're selling the house, because I was in the military for 29 years, and we're selling our house, and some guy walks in and says, I'll pay 80,000 more than anybody else. Am I gonna say, oh, no, wait a minute, I want to give it to this other person? I'm gonna say, give me the money. So I think it would require a change in the state law. Otherwise, there's no way we could protect it as Yelm or anybody else saying, I'm sorry, we discriminate anybody that has cash. We'll only take these people, and you'll have to do a background check. And if you're wealthy, we don't want you. You can't do that.
Yeah, we're
Not the
getting into
wealthy.
philosophical stuff here.
Yeah,
It's not wealthy people.
no, it's a wealthy corporation.
Cultural.
buying it.
Corporation.
But you can't stop that unless you got a law. It would take a law that we couldn't implement. in
There used to
Yelm.
be a cartoon years ago,
Yeah.
there ought to be a law.
Yeah, there ought to be a
Remember
law.
Well, that's,
Well, the answer,
It's sad, but-
then, you can immediately tell, when those offers come in, any agent has to know what those offers are, you know. Problem is, of course, the state has come out and said, don't you tell sellers anything about who the buyers are, you know, because that's against the law. You know, and that's where it all came about from, when part of the love letters, that they call them love letters, where the buyers would write letters.
All right.
And tell them.
Johnny grew up in here.
Yes, exactly, it's the perfect, you know, whatever. They can't, none of that, nothing can influence a seller's decision, which is kind of,
Is that a law?
that's, well, yeah, it's a law that if you're influenced by something, it could happen to be against the,
Perspective.
no,
The bidding process?
no.
Discrimination.
Discrimination, yeah. Yeah, it's very easy to pop that right in discrimination, you know, and so you just can't do that. Now, if I get offers, I tell the person, if it's a VA, I said, well, the military people are the only ones that can use VA, you know. And then, you know, cash buyers can be, you know, they can be a corporation, I mean, right on top, you know, Mulligan and Mulligan, you know. I mean, that's pretty easy to see. I did have two last year that said, I'm pro-military, and you can't tell me this, these people are military, but the VA says they're military, so I'm selling to them. You know, so anybody can do what they want, but like I said, they come in with 80,000 more.
Pretty hard to say no.
Yeah, it's really tough.
I like the 400 example myself.
Well, you know, Windermere did sell one for $1 million more.
My sense is those are not isolated stories either. I think yours is probably pretty typical, unfortunately. And it's also not only the military families that are dealing with that. Everyone's getting outbid. So that kind of goes to the supply question and the style question as well, the variety of housing types. Because, you know, there's a simple supply and demand issue here as well.
I'm just curious. I don't want to derail us for any length of time, but in 10 years ago or more, was there that much of a cash buyer situation going on?
Because I'm trying to think of
When did that start to happen?
18. Because we went through some of that, you know, just before we hit the end of 05 and then 06 and, you know, so we hit some of that. We're always going to be high and low slumps, you know, but
Is it because
not
of-
like this.
Is it because of supply or is it because of a whole new attitude in the corporations before they want to invest in?
Well, the corporations have tons of money, you know, and so
I think it's,
they want to diversify.
I don't think it's supply.
Well, my son's observation is a lot of this is because they're buying them to rent.
Yes.
Rent is going out of sight, particularly in King County and everything. So these corporations are buying up all these houses because the people that can't afford to rent, and his perception is the interest rates go up, as we know it's 6% now. Renters, you won't be able to afford to buy a house because the payments that were $2,000 a year ago are now $4,000 a month, and that puts you over. So you're forced to go in and rent for $3,000 a month because you can afford it. And he thinks as the interest rates go up, there's going to be a greater drive for these corporations to buy these houses because they make more money off of them renting
Yes.
than they do selling. And I don't know how accurate that is, but that's his observation.
Well, they'll have the cash to make deals. And
So
you're gonna see more, well, there's more foreclosures coming now, so.
I think they did a national news story on that very subject. I don't remember what network it was, but they did.
So this kind of gets to number 3, if I can transition us to that final item. What role should the city play in implementing strategies to address the area's housing challenges? There's only so much municipal corporation like the city of Yelm can do. The private sector can do something. So what's where do you think the city should move into or establish some strengths there?
To me, it's easy. It's zoning and infrastructure.
Mhm.
Those are the two things. that-
But zoning and
Maintain.
infrastructure to help to encourage builders to do attached homes.
If they just passed the height. That's a lot of developers. They're gonna be looking at, you know, they don't wanna have to buy all this property to build this many homes when you can buy this much property. Build that many homes or.
Specifically development regulations then.
If I could real quick, I'm Chris Carroll, I'm the building official for the city of Yelm. I talk to a lot of developers, I talk to a lot of home buyers. And like you're saying with the military housing, a good friend of mine sold his house in Washington. It was a small house that was all his family could afford, was stationed in Kentucky and actually bought a mansion in Kentucky, but they sold their house for here. And talking with developers, since the Fed was recently raised, they're getting apprehensive. The builders are starting to shy away from the 3,200 square foot home, the 2,400 square foot home, and they're thinking, you know what, let's do the 1,500 square foot Rambler. They're studying the demographic. They're seeing if the senior population is rising, because if it is, I mean, I'm not trying to generalize, this is their words. Seniors don't need stairs. Seniors don't need a 2 and 3 story home. So a lot of these developers are starting to do their homework and seeing what makes the most sense in Yelm and in Washington. How are we going to flip these houses quickly? Because sales have slowed. And that panics them because a lot of these builders went through the 07 and 08 recession and lost everything. So maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe we'll start seeing smaller, more affordable homes. One can only hope as the demographic changes. Maybe that availability will rise.
I've seen places where when they start putting in townhomes, which do have stairs unfortunately, sometimes, because they build up for the larger footprint. That is, I guess footprint is the right, larger square footage, or the actual amount of land that they're on. But if you can go with, I know there are constraints on the condo, but condos that I'm aware of that are in Federal Way, these are nice homes that are on separate plots of land, but they're all attached and garages and infrastructure that supports. It's certainly there are ways to manage that they're able to function. And that means more housing, more available housing and less of a footprint.
And when you go with more than 2 attached, you start to get sprinkler buildings in the fire department.
Sprinkler buildings, they don't like that,
I
or
love that.
they love
They
that.
love
Fire
it, but
department does, but
the
the
builders don't love it because that costs a lot more money.
Yeah, so the apartments, the triplexes, quadplexes, they're all gonna be sprinkled, so that's less taxing on the fire department. The developer homeowner gets a break on the insurance rates in the sprinkler buildings, so. How do we get into those row houses? You see a lot of those in Oregon. That's a great example of a sprinkler safe building. They build tall instead of wide, and you can get a lot more people in there.
Because when you look at the statistics that we were shown earlier, we have a lot of multi-bedroom, large homes that are fairly new, that are occupied and owned. That's our big boom over the last 25 years here. And I think now we have an opportunity to provide a lot more variety of homes. Not saying that we don't still build some that are larger, but we don't have a lot of the smaller homes. We don't have a lot of attached. We don't have a lot that are on a small plot of land.
I think we're getting there though, Miriam and the planning department are doing a fantastic job with some of the code changes. And I think it's kind of guiding people in that direction. So that's kind of to answer your question 3, I think that's where the city is definitely helping in that regard.
Dealing with deals where these companies buy up homes to rent out. Okay, I think you need tenant protection for the renters. Being in the military, I've retired from the military, and you move around, you don't get a choice to go up to the captain and say, well, I can't afford to live here, send me to some places cheaper. He says, they'll tell you, you're a captured audience. Yeah, well, you have to have some type of protection for the tenants. Because for the military, you have no choice. You're supposed to be here, do your job, shut up.
other feedback there. Mr. Howard, do you have anything?
I'm probably in a little different category. I do build houses for a living and I have for almost 45 years. But I deal with the customers more than this. I deal with that individual who's actually saved X dollars and wants their dream home. Okay, that's the type of homes that I go out and build, and I've built almost 200 of them. And so what we're looking at here is, the way I'm kind of getting this, we want to bring in more housing, but what I see and what I hear, it's got to be affordable for everybody. And at one time we were studying stuff here to change, I think it's the density. How can we put an existing house on an existing city lot that's got, for example, another house on it? You're trying to push more. It's the old cliche, let's try to shove 10 yards of dirt in a 5-yard bag and make it work. I think to your question number 3 down here, the role of the city, they need to be a better participant in this way. It costs so much money for a lot of guys to develop the cost of water, the hookup fees, the sewer fees and all of that, and that plays a part. But if you're going to reduce the cost of lower income housing as the example, those fees should be relaxed a little so that they're part of the affordability.
I can go along with that. I worked for Habitat for Humanity for about 17 years. And I built houses out here in Yelm South Loveland, then went to Olympia. And I went down, they said, well, you need to pay for your permit. I said, well, I remember how much, where I was gonna write a check for. They said, it's $20,000. That was 15 years ago. $20,000. The house was costing us to build is 30,000. So, that's exactly what he's saying. You need some way to entice the affordable housing.
Well, it can't just be one way. It has to be balanced for the whole scope of the work being done, I think. Can't put it all just on the builder, put it all just on the municipality, but everybody should have to share.
Thank you for your feedback. I think, I'm sure the staff will continue to collect information. If you have other thoughts you'd like to share with them, I think that's, that would be welcome on our side. So two more quick things, before we wrap up. Going back to the public engagement plan that we handed out, is that the right list of stakeholders? Or are there other folks maybe shout out in the meeting that we should be aware of? Or conversely, if you have a real long list, maybe pass that along to staff as well, so we can contact them. I think our target is maybe 5 or 6 of those. Maybe one hired, depending on what the representation looks like, but
Why don't you talk to South Puget Sound Habitat for Humanity?
talk to Carly Friday.
Okay, and I've been gone from them for quite a few years, but
Because that's the kind of thing, if we can encourage. more habitat homes.
Isn't there a Habitat home underway right now? Look at that development map that was printed out, which I thought was super cool. Staff put the housing developments that are under construction or proposed and at some stage in the permitting process, either in noticing or plans under review or something like that is my guess. I know it's a little bit tight there, but right there in the smack dab of the middle is a 17-unit Habitat for Humanity development.
Blue, under
Blue, right, proposed townhome.
Right there.
okay.
Maybe we could pull that up on the screen and zoom in on some of that just for clarity's sake. So partly when we're looking at this, we're trying to figure out what's going on in the community and also where some where the needs are at. And obviously, a good amount of developments happening over on the west side of Yelm. Hundreds of units really over there, and even more to go with the build out of the master plan development. But there are a handful of apartments. I know I clicked on this afternoon that Windstone apartment has one of the two of those. I think it's the Windstone one has a time lapse construction video. That's pretty cool. They look great. 75 units. It looked like it was for sale though. But there was a building and I'm going to try to turn it to some property owner. So if you got $25.5 million in pocket, I think you might want to call them. And there's a handful of other stuff there. In the inset, you can see some things happening right in the middle of the core. Discussion about mobility issues with seniors, and actually everybody's got mobility issues at one point or another. It's just a matter of time. So putting units within walking distance of your downtown core, that's usually something that appeals to some group of people at some point in their life. So you can see some of these duplexes getting proposed in there. So that's a lot of permit volume for a small staff, but that's coming through. Anything else you wanted to point out about the map that you noticed?
No, it's just like we have many projects right now, like in land use phase and in construction. In 2019 and 20, we received like 20-30 applications. I mean, we added 20-30 like homes, but in 2021, it was 100 units. And in 2022, I believe it was 300 permits we issued.
More to come.
I think it's gonna go like this.
Yes, like, I mean, right now, we just received something like, last month, it was like 101 units. That's in land use phase again, but, we are receiving so many applications. There is a desire to build in Yale. Lots of developers, choose Yale.
A great way to kind of wrap this up, which is now is the time to plan and ensure that you're directing growth in a way that is consistent with your values and the community is at, and ensure it's consistent and current with infrastructure that's in the ground. Or be planning for that. The other way to do it.
And city did change some requirements, like some regulations in commercial zones. You don't allow like residential uses anymore unless it's part of the mixed use development. We increase the density. These are all like we did this so we can have like different types of housing, you know, for everybody. And we're trying to help our developers too, like to make it more like appealing for them to come and build like in our commercial area, so we can get like part commercial out of it and part like residential. And we just increase the height in all these commercial zones from 35 to 60. So staff is doing that. I mean, city is working on it, and you know, like that's why we have like this great team here. They're gonna help us to update our code, like anything that's needed to be done. We are willing to do that.
Well, given the amount of development that we're anticipating, given that we have annexation that's happening, we also know because of, it's been pent up. That the developers have been wanting to develop and haven't been able to for many, many years here. We used to have additional staff on in the planning staff, particularly for the master plan community, and it was paid for by the master plan community. And so would some of this housing plan provide feedback to the city that we might need more support from more planning staff? We're gonna have so many, I mean, it's going from 100 units to 300 units to 600, and it's gonna keep exploding because there's more demand. So much demand here. Nothing. I know the mayor's gone. That's something I'm just wondering if that's part of this effort would come out and say for the housing plan. Starting as a small city, but it's turning into a much larger city. I mean, if that's anything that's gonna be presented as part of this, or is that something maybe this planning commission can bring forward later?
We can keep up with it.
Yeah.
Right. To take off. And then right behind that will be.
Commercial, because that's what happens. They start to, with commercial interests, they'll start to see the development here, and they already have seen where it's going. That's why Walmart's here and not elsewhere around. So it's
Heads in beds, that's usually what places are looking for. They just run their numbers, they pull a radius or drive time calculation from properties, which is looking at the running numbers on disposable income, annual household income. Yeah, really. So yeah, you pick up 1,100 units on the, you know, in the master plan community, and that's 3,000, 4,000 people, depending on how you run that. A lot of extra people. So you're one thing about Yelm that we recognize, at least there's a lot of gaps in between development. It's not like, you know, sequential, like back to back to back to back. It's like leapfrogging, you know, and so there is evident potential, I think, for infill, whatever that looks like, whatever type of housing style you're talking about, I think. One of the things when we look at this, this item on resources for maintenance. And Nicole could probably speak to this a little bit, but that if the infrastructure is not there, it costs a bunch of money to get it there. If it's already there, it's running a side sewer is a lot easier than a brand new sewer main. It's cheaper, and the maintenance obligations for that ultimately fall on the city 25 years from now. So we'll be looking at that as well. We'll have some ideas or present some ideas about where infill can occur. I think that's just part of the Growth Management Act, keeping within your growth boundaries.
Maybe that's part of giving us feedback later on, is I've been under the impression that because we were so delayed in allowing the permitting, and yet we had planned for the infrastructure. I thought we were sort of primed and ready for this huge growth.
Yeah, I would say that's probably right. I wouldn't speak to specifics on that, but you can see big gaps in that map. If we had the aerial photo up, you could see that. I mean, I'm not as familiar, but like this, and this inset actually, wraps around a bunch of county property and then drops in with the right of way back to Old Highway 99. And so ostensibly, any generations from now, that's all gonna fill in and be part of Yelm, right? So when we look at your growth numbers that OFM and the county work through and assign Yelm a number for a growth, then we try to figure out if you can accommodate that growth within your existing boundaries. And if you can't, then that's one of the reasons that triggers this annexation UGA expansion discussion. But I sense that there's probably a lot more accommodation within your city limits for housing for the foreseeable future. Especially if you start doing different types and everyone's not grabbing, 11,000 square feet of a quarter-acre lot.
To answer your question though, in regard to the report showing the need for additional planners, essentially, preliminary data from Office of Financial Management has already shown that Yelm has a way higher percentage growth rate than the rest of Thurston or Washington, really. So that alone, says, hey, there are people who are going to pay these fees, even if you waive them for developers, the infrastructure, everything is going to go in. So that's going to show the need for additional staff. So
Yeah, additional tax.
As long as we know, it's gonna be.
that it looks like.
I think that's a good point. We can float some ideas on that, what that looks like. Okay, gotcha.
When we speak of adoption measures, what specifically are you?
Are you speaking about the housing action plan itself, the document?
Huh?
We would bring a series of drafts back to you of specific portions of it so you can review it. And would present you with the final housing action plan for review. And then ostensibly the way it would go is you would make a recommendation to council like you would on any other planning item, right? Because you're an advisory group. Your idea is you make a recommendation. Council is the one who makes the legislative decision. I believe that's how it's set up. Okay. Thanks very much for your time. I hope you found this helpful to kind of kick us off. We certainly did. And if you have additional input for us, we would be happy to take that through staff. If you have individuals you think are critical for us to speak to, we'd love to hear that as well.
I'm impressed. You did this in 6 days.
Well, we love you. We're working on the rails to trails conversion as well.
Yeah.
With the vessel and CJ Alliance is what bypass. Don't blame me for that. And I think we're also supposed to be working on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I always done a lot of work. Subcommittee reports, and anything?
I can tell you that on the rails, the trail, a week or so ago, that they had, responded to the last set of questions for the public assessment, and therefore they're going to be ready to pull off the rail, in the very near future. So, I assume that this fall, they'll be working on the trail. And I'll make sure to alert the homeowners that are on both sides of it. So that we know that it's supposed to be. But that's the main one. The other one is by the end of this month, there's still the splash pad is still operating on the weekends, and there'll be some, I think it's the 28th. There's some splash pad event with people and going off their pets and things like that. They're gonna have sort of a closing out the splash pad for the year. That's about it.
I
There's
do-
lots of other things going on.
Except not the tree board.
Now we meet this month.
Yeah, but I'm also on the Young Creative Board. And we just had our first meeting, and it's basically joining in with Thurston County, and it's we got a designate. If we can go through all of the list, that list is huge. There's quite a few things on the list for us to have to fill out and to accomplish to be considered a creative beautification area. But it's a great thing. It's hopefully, I mean, we got about half of it done here just the other day, so.
So Steve Craig's setting that up. Who else is
Yeah.
involved?
It's first, when you first look at it, it is daunting. Yes, but Steve's there.
Thank you. And so the tree thing, you're going to be meeting.
Yeah, we meet the last Monday of the month.
Yeah.
Yes, we got some work to do on inventory. We've got a couple drunk drivers take some trees out in Yelm. We've had a couple of trees that were replaced that didn't survive the winter, like over on Yelm Creek area. So we'll do some replacing. We have some work to do with inventory, updating stuff. Yeah, that definitely keeps us busy.
Do you know what the name of those trees are that are alongside the
I'm
road?
trying to look into that. I will definitely have.
Oh, it's okay. Good.
Yeah, I was going through our tree inventory, and every time I get the page open, my phone would ring and I would something else. Yeah, so it's number 9 on my list. I saw a list of things I want to get done. And about 35% of it gets done, and then the list just keeps growing. You're not moving, you're still number 9. Yeah. You're number up, not down, so.
Are there any other subcommittee reports? Hearing none. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for